Get ready for a journey that defies logic and history, a mystery that has endured for almost a century and continues to fascinate and intrigue millions. Imagine one day, the most famous woman in the world, a living legend of aviation, simply vanishing into the vast and unforgiving blue of the Pacific Ocean. Without a trace, without a goodbye, just the deafening silence of an enigma that refuses to be unraveled. This is the story of Amelia Earhart, the pioneering aviator whose last flight became one of humanity's greatest unsolved mysteries. Who was Amelia Earhart? A woman ahead of her time, born in 1897, who defied social conventions and the skies. She wasn't just a pilot. She was a symbol of courage, determination, and female empowerment. In 1932, she became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, a feat that catapulted her to global stardom and transformed her into an icon. Her altitude and speed records, her participation in the founding of the 99s, an organization for the advancement of women in aviation, and her books about her flying experiences cemented her place in history. But for Amelia, the sky was not the limit. It was just the beginning. Her ultimate dream was the most audacious of all: to be the first woman to circumnavigate the globe along the equator. On June 1, 1937, just shy of her 40th birthday, Amelia Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, took off from Miami, Florida, aboard a Lockheed Electra 10E, a twin-engine plane modified with extra fuel tanks for the long journey. The trip was planned in stages, with strategic stops for refueling and maintenance. They had already covered much of the way, crossing continents and oceans, overcoming technical and climatic challenges. With each landing, the acclaim was immense. Global anticipation grew. The whole world followed every mile flown, every new record broken by this fearless duo. But fate, or perhaps the sheer vastness of the Pacific, held a dark chapter for this heroic saga. On July 2, 1937, Amelia and Noonan departed from Lae, New Guinea, for the most dangerous and isolated leg of their journey, a flight of approximately 4,000 kilometers to the small and remote Howland Island, a tiny speck of land in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, which would serve as their next refueling point. The island was so small that finding it in the vast ocean was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Reliant almost exclusively on precise navigation and radio communication, the last communications were fraught with tension and uncertainty. The USCGC Itasca, a United States Coast Guard ship, anxiously awaited Earhart's arrival at Howland Island, attempting to establish radio contact. Amelia's messages were intermittent, with reports of low visibility and difficulty locating the island. "Cannot reach you by radio? We are flying at 1,000 feet, she transmitted at one point. Later, the last message received, at 8:43 a.m., was short and worrying. "We are on the 157,337 line. We will repeat this message. We will repeat this on 6,210 kilocycles. Wait." And then, silence. A silence that echoes to this day. The plane, the Lockheed Electra 10E, and its two occupants vanished without a trace. The ensuing search was one of the largest and most expensive rescue operations in United States history, involving ships and aircraft, scouring thousands of square miles of the Pacific, but nothing was found. No wreckage, no bodies, no definitive clue. On January 5, 1939, Amelia Earhart was officially declared dead. But the absence of concrete evidence only fueled imagination and gave rise to a series of theories attempting to explain the inexplicable. Theory 1. Crash and sinking in the Pacific. The most accepted and widely spread theory is that Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan simply ran out of fuel and crashed into the vast Pacific Ocean. Given the immensity of the ocean, the navigation difficulties of the time, and adverse weather conditions, a forced water landing would be catastrophic. The plane, made mostly of metal, would sink quickly, taking its occupants and any chance of recovery with it. Experts point out that, even with extra tanks, the Electra's range was limited for such a long and challenging flight. The lack of two-way communication, as Earhart and Noonan did not know Morse code, also hindered the exchange of crucial information for landing. The absence of wreckage is explained by the ocean's depth and strong currents, which could have dispersed or sunk any trace. Recently, attempts to find the plane using high-tech sonar have been made. But so far, what was thought to be wreckage has turned out to be natural rock formations, reinforcing the difficulty of finding anything on the seabed. Theory 2. Survival and shipwreck on Nikumaroro Island. This is, perhaps, the most intriguing and persistent theory, offering a glimpse of both hope and tragedy. It suggests that Amelia and Noonan did not crash into the ocean, but managed to make an emergency landing on an uninhabited and remote island, now known as The island, a coral atoll, was small and inhospitable, but would offer a temporary refuge from the ocean's fury. The basis for this theory lies in discoveries made over the years. In 1940, a British group exploring the island found human bones, a woman's shoe, a naval instrument, and other artifacts. Initially, a forensic analysis at the time concluded that the bones belonged to a man. However, Decades later, in 2080, forensic anthropologist Richard Jantz of the University of Tennessee re-examined the bone measurements using modern forensic techniques. His research concluded that the bones were 99% consistent with Amelia Earhart's physical characteristics, strongly suggesting they were hers. In addition to the bones, aluminum fragments believed to be from Earhart's plane were found on including a piece that would have been an addition made to the aircraft in Miami to replace a window. There are also reports of radio transmissions received days after the disappearance, which some interpret as distress calls from Amelia and Noonan, indicating they survived for a time on the island. One such communication, allegedly picked up by a woman in Texas, described a plane crashed on an island, not on maps. Small, uninhabited, part of the plane on land, part in the sea, and mentioned that Noonan was injured. If this theory is true, the image is one of a desperate struggle for survival in a hostile environment, culminating in a slow death by thirst, starvation, or exposure. The absence of complete bodies or more remains is explained by the presence of coconut crabs on Nikumaroro giant, omnivorous crustaceans that can reach up to a meter in width and feed on decaying flesh, potentially having consumed the remains. This hypothesis, although not official, is considered by many to be the most confirmed and with the most circumstantial evidence. Theory 3. Capture by the Japanese. A less credible but popular theory suggests that Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan did not crash into the ocean or shipwreck on a deserted island, but were captured by Japanese forces. This hypothesis posits that they would have landed in the Marshall Islands, which were under Japanese control before World War II, and were taken prisoner, dying in captivity, possibly in Saipan. Some proponents of this theory point to a photograph supposedly showing Earhart and Noonan on a pier in Jaluit Atoll, Marshall Islands, near a Japanese ship. However, this theory lacks concrete proof and is largely discredited by historians and there are no official records or reliable evidence to corroborate the capture. The photograph in question has been widely contested and deemed inconclusive. Furthermore, the idea that the Japanese government would keep such famous prisoners secret for so long is seen as unlikely. Other theories and the legacy of the mystery. Over the years, other more speculative theories have emerged, such as Amelia Earhart being on a spy mission for the U.S. government, or that she survived and lived under a new identity. However, these are largely considered fiction and have no basis. In fact, Amelia Earhart's disappearance remains one of the greatest enigmas in aviation and history. The lack of a definitive answer keeps the search for new clues alive and the speculation about what really happened. Each new expedition, each new analysis of old data, rekindles the hope of finally unraveling the Aviator's fate. Amelia Earhart is remembered not only for her disappearance, but for her extraordinary life and indomitable spirit. She broke gender barriers, inspired generations of women to pursue their dreams, and showed the world that the sky had no limits for human ambition. Her legacy goes far beyond the mystery of her end. It is a testament to courage, perseverance, and the insatiable desire to explore the unknown. Where did the Aviator go? Perhaps we will never know for sure. But the legend of Amelia Earhart, the woman who dared to fly around the world and vanished into the clouds, will continue to soar high in the collective imagination, an eternal reminder that some mysteries are as vast and profound as the ocean itself. And it is this uncertainty that keeps her story so alive and captivating, an eternal hook for human curiosity.